We all know Oreo cookie as the number one cookie in the world, but did you know that it started out as a copycat? Nobody really knows this story as much, but it shows us so much about branding, positioning, and execution that every marketer must understand this story. So in 1908, Sunshine Biscuits launched the first ever sandwich cookie, and they called it Hydrox. I know, beautiful name, right? Well, I guess in 1908, that was the kind of evolution of, pharmacy and science. And they thought the purest, most form of food was this idea of putting hydrogen and oxygen together in hydrox. And it was also a time when chocolate was starting to become much more popular around the world. Imagine a time when chocolate wasn't that popular. Well, it was in the early 1900s. So you've got Hydrox that's launched by the Sunshine Biscuit Company. They put this beautiful vanilla cream in the middle and they launched it. People loved it. It was delicious. It was like, wow, this is excellent. And they marketed it as this is a high-end, premium, kosher cookie that is a little bit more expensive, but absolutely worth it. And it took off. It was actually working very well. So well that their biggest competitor, Nabisco, which was the National Biscuit Company, they actually copied it. They said, well, you know what? It's going really well. We're going to copy it and we're going to call ours Oreo. And the cookie wars began. So for the next 20 to 30 years in the early 1900s, they started to compete against each other. Now, Hydrox, they were the real innovators. They actually had a really good product and they were like, we're a great product. This is a high-end cookie. We're owning the category. And they started to then see their market share getting eaten up by Oreo. And Oreo started to say, well, you know what? We're going to position it as a little bit more friendly for everyone, a little bit more kid-centric. And they started to say, we're going to be a little bit different in the positioning. And Hydrox was thinking, guys, like you have a inferior product to us, and we're going to start doing competitive ads. So you can see that during the 40s, 50s, 60s, they started doing ads of like, we don't have lard in our cookies in Hydrox. We're pure, we're better, we're positioned more. Where Oreo started to say, you know what? We're going to be positioned. It's going to be fun. It's going to be maybe even a little bit cheaper, but it's going to be accessible. And they started to then go toe to toe. But here's the key element. So positioning wise, different positions, different target audiences that they were going for. But what Nabisco had over the Sunshine Biscuit Company was distribution. Nabisco was able to then get a lot more distribution nationally before Hydrox. Then to support that new distribution that they have nationally, they started to do all these like TV ads and commercials. Now, the one great thing is that if you can get consumers to have a ritual to say, when and where do I eat Oreo cookies? So they started having these commercials with kids and they were experimenting. And then they had this idea of how are people eating this? And so they realized that people were actually turning it and opening it up, licking it and then like dunking it in milk. And so instead of being like, okay, that's interesting, we're going to continue to go on the product, they started to actually tap into consumer behavior and how people enjoyed them and who they enjoyed them with. And so they actually said, it's with adults and with kids together, they would have this kind of cookie time. After school, get a little glass of milk, they would have this little cookie experience. Then they started to show that, you know what, guys, let's show a grandma or a grandpa or a parent with their kids dunking it and having fun. And it's like this fun enjoyment together. Where Hydrox went in the direction of saying, we're superior product. This is why you should buy us. We don't have lard. We don't have this. And they started listing off benefits, but they never tapped into the emotional connection with consumers. Where Oreo started to have wide distribution and tap into this moment. So much so that in the 80s, they started to then, this is becoming synonymous with the dunking, that they actually positioned Oreo as Milk's favorite cookie. Imagine that. Like, can you imagine like Milk's favorite cookie? They were taking probably the number one liquid that kids are drinking, that people are enjoying in the 80s. And they were actually saying, this is Milk's favorite cookie. And it's like this idea of dunking it and eating it. And now we've all been indoctrinated that that's how you eat Oreos. They're perfect dipping, right? You dip it, you dunk it, you lick it, you bite it. And now they've kind of then started to ingrain that and take that forward. Hydrox, by the 70s, 80s, weren't investing in their marketing, weren't actually supporting their distribution within it, concentrated too much. The name, let's be honest, stinks, right? Because consumers change. It sounds like a cleaning product. not actually a cookie brand that you want to be associated with. And they started to lose it. And then Oreo did something that I think is genius. They doubled down on innovation. You start looking at the collaborations, the new flavors, the new varieties, the new offering, and even licensing into ice cream, cookies and cream, all these different pieces. They started to actually make Oreo cookie, that flavor, so synonymous within our culture, so ubiquitous in terms of what we think about that kind of cookie flavor, that we absolutely love it. That consumers now, it's actually part of our cultural folklore of this category. So a consistent brand that is executed with promotions, but you're tapping into rituals, you're tapping into how to eat it, the eating occasion, the expansion of your product into new categories through licensing or through collaborations. You're constantly innovating. This is what took Oreo from a copycat in the early 1900s to competing with what was supposed to be a better product to now becoming the number one by far, and Hydrox gone, gone to oblivion. And I think we can take these principles and apply them to our brands today, and we can get big results. So if you're not part of the Brand Builders community, you have to join us. We would love to have you. We are all about building the best brands, and the best brands are built by the best marketers. And that's what we want to do. So resources, coaching, events, we want you to be a part of our community. We would love to have you, and you are going to love it.